Hello and welcome to episode 59 of Battlefield 4 News, and today's episode is all about CTE. The community test environment has been running for a few weeks now, and DICE have just changed the terms and conditions on the non-disclosure agreement that lets you start talking about what's going on in CTE. So I'm going to go through what the current aim is of CTE and what the current patches have done to the game, because there are only a limited number of people on CTE, so you have to be on PC, you have to be a premium member, and you had to have signed up when there were free slots available. So it's quite restrictive, but hopefully this will let you know what's going on CTE if you haven't been able to get on it. So DICE are calling the aims of the CTE program initiatives, and initiative number 1, Netcode improvements. Our first initiative on the CTE will be focused around network improvements and fixes, or Netcode as it is referred to in the community. We are looking at two separate things: server performance and player experience. So I think the fact that CTE was set up to look at the netcode isn't going to shock anybody. It's the biggest issue in Battlefield 4, and it's something that you can only really look at by fiddling around with the servers, and you can't do that on a live game. So initially what they did was set up the servers exactly the same as they are in Battlefield 4 on the live version, and we ran them for about a week, 10 days, so that they could benchmark them, gather all the information as to how the game currently runs before they started fiddling around with it. An interesting thing they did at this stage was also make the servers worse. They deliberately caused rubber banding on some of the servers, and you would get massive FPS drops and just watch people teleporting around all over the place. It's quite funny but quite frustrating because you had to play a full round of that so that they could gather the data. And of course the whole point of this is to get player feedback, and there were specific issues they were looking at, which is getting killed behind cover, no damage indicators, vehicle and player collisions, ragdoll physics, explosives, and the ECM. And the problems with all of these seem to be related to the client-server interaction in the netcode. So that was what we were initially doing before there was a patch, essentially checking out the game as it is so that DICE could monitor the servers with this new CTE environment, which has got a lot more data gathering and testing inbuilt. It's a bit more of a raw version of Battlefield 4 rather than the finished product, or supposedly finished product, which is on the live servers. The CTE servers are essentially running a raw version of Battlefield 4 so that they can get in and fiddle with it. So this is the first patch that we got on CTE, and as you can see there are several fixes in this. They fixed explosive packs not being shootable sometimes, so that's C4 and claymores, and I think it even included anti-tank mines. They fixed the damage mismatch between client and servers, so that was helping with the situation of the server thinking you're dead and the client not thinking you're dead, or the opposite way around. Fixed the third person player orientation mismatch. Not sure what that is, but I think it was if you switched to third person view, then some items didn't appear to be open, like doorways and things like that. Character collision improvements. So if you're running alongside another character, particularly when you first spawn in, you'll notice that occasionally you clip together and bounce off, and they've improved that slightly. It's still a bit of a problem. They've improved client packet loss. Not sure how effective this was because I don't suffer from packet loss even on the CTE environment. They did several small fixes, and then the one that everybody was kind of looking at closely was the high frequency, high priority update, which is the tick rate improvements. And effectively what they did was put a bubble around the player. So the whole server is running at a 10 Hz tick rate, same as it is in a live, but each player is running at a 30 Hz tick rate. So anything that happens to you is reported faster. So when you get shot, when you're shooting, that kind of stuff all gets reported to the server faster, but the server as a whole is still running at 10. So that means the environment, things like levolution, building destruction, and basically anything that's happening to the server world is still happening at a 10 Hz rate. Anything that happens to a character is happening at a 30 Hz rate. So it's 3 times faster, and that should help out with some of the issues of client-server imbalance. And to test this, we basically played the same version of the maps that we were playing before, so that was 64-man Hainan Resort, and they went through and monitored all the servers again. And this wasn't a problem-free patch. So because the game was designed to run at 10 Hz and suddenly parts of it running at 30 Hz, there were a few issues in the game. So I mentioned in the Q&A, or I might mention in the Q&A, I'm not sure when this video is going up, when the Q&A video is going up, that there's a problem with grenades, that there was a delay before the grenade going off and you dying, so you actually got all the explosion sound and explosion effects and then you died. There was also a bit of an issue with dying quickly. Now it wasn't a one-shot kill, you were getting hit by an entire burst, but the problem was that sometimes you seemed to die and then the burst would come, or you would die halfway through the burst, and on the kill cam you would actually see yourself dying rather than lying on the floor. So that was a bit odd, it took a while of getting used to, but that was patch 1. And after patch 1 came patch 2. So there's now an option in the game options to allow you to adjust your tick rate. So if you're running on a low-end PC, you could struggle with the tick rate set at 30. So what they have done is made it adjustable. It's now low, medium and high, and I think it's 10, 20 and 30, and it defaults to high, which is the new 30 Hz tick rate. Now there is an interesting little comparison here. I tried it several times, reducing the tick rate down to 10 Hz to see if you had an advantage over somebody who's got a tick rate of 30 Hz, and it was a bit inconclusive, but on the whole I don't think it makes an awful lot of difference. There will be a slight advantage at running at 30 Hz over 10 Hz, just because the information you're sending to the server is faster than the information your opponent's sending to the server. But your opponent is still sending information to the server fast enough to kill you. It's just whether or not the server can handle the 2 different tick rates, and it seems to be so far. The other changes they made were that they reduced the amount of screen shake. Now, not removed it, they reduced it, and it was better. To be honest, I'm not somebody who complains a lot about screen shake. You know, if you're getting a cruise missile dropped on you, then the screen should shake a little because the ground's going to shake. They try to improve the performance of chat because sometimes it just delays things and the conversation will be like 10 seconds behind. They added Operation Metro and Wavebreaker. They fixed the underground spawning exploit on Hainan Resort, where you could actually swim under the level. So, and there was a way to make yourself do it. But I'm not going to tell you what it was, but it's fixed on CTE. And the testing for this patch was all about the tick rate, so they wanted you to mess around with the high frequency response setting in the gameplay options, check it out, see how it worked. To be honest, I never noticed much difference, but I am running on a fast PC with a fast internet connection. But on the whole, people seem to think that this new high frequency tick rate works well, so that's a good positive thing, and you may see it coming soon to a Battlefield server near you. Patch 3 had some server adjustments to deal with the new higher tick rate, so the frame history time was reduced from 1.5 seconds to 1 second. Now this is the system on the server that deals with packet loss, so if a client is losing packets, it will allow them up to 1.5 seconds on the current live servers to catch up. What they did on the new servers is reduce that to 1 second, and it basically sharpens up the server's response. So if you were stood by a corner and somebody suffering from packet loss was shooting at you, and you ducked behind the corner, the server used to allow the packet loss client up to 1.5 seconds to report what it was doing. Now they've reduced that down to 1 second. So it does mean that the performance you'll get will be worse if you are suffering from packet loss, but it means as a whole the game performance is better. Patch 3 also added the Death Shield fix to CTE because for some reason it wasn't on our servers. They added the Obliteration competitive mode. So this is a smaller version of Obliteration where the maps are smaller and the explosive points are closer together. It's designed for 5-on-5 competitive play. I'm not sure how successful it's going to be, but it looks interesting. They finally found a permanent way of fixing the Operation Metro roof exploit. Ta-da! It's only been 3 years. PC client stability improvement and high altitude jet fix. So the problem with jets was that when you got to a certain height while flying, your guns stopped working, which was a bit inconvenient. That's the problem that meant that jets were struggling to shoot down the gunship. They essentially had to come up from underneath it to try and kill it. And the testing for this patch was all about the frame history time fix. Well, not fix, reduction. And checking to see if you could still get shot round corners. Now, can't say that this has removed the problem entirely, but it has certainly reduced it a lot. And that brings us to patch 4, the latest patch that went live yesterday. They've added the ability for the server to turn off the netcode high frequency setting if it's having server performance issues. They've changed the FOV slider options, so the UI now scales properly vertically, and they've improved the uniform soldier aiming based on player feedback. Uniform soldier aiming is all about your mouse sensitivity, so your hip fire and your aimed fire sensitivity are the same if you use this option, or you can turn it off and use the slider, which allows you to adjust the mouse sensitivity just for aimed sight. So lets you be a bit more flexible with your mouse sensitivities. They've added a third person rear view for jet pilots, so jets can now look behind them. They've implemented a field of view slider for vehicles when you're looking in third person view. There's a potential fix for the kill card in hardcore not showing up properly, and there's the fix for the ragdoll physics on the weapons as well as people now. And they changed the save file locations for CTE so they weren't the same as normal Battlefield. And finally, they made some tweaks to the competitive obliteration mode, which was fixing an invulnerability glitch, tweaked some of the map layouts, and they changed the end of the game so that if a bomb is planted, then the game won't end until that is resolved. And the testing for this patch was all about obliteration mode, making sure that the standard obliteration mode still worked properly and that this new competitive mode worked. But there's still a massive problem with the competitive mode, and that's that you can see the bomb carrier. On a 5v5 version of this game mode that's supposed to be competitive, don't flag up the bomb carrier with a massive symbol. It removes any chance of teams using tactics, sneaking, distractions to try and get the bomb to the objective, because the opposing team knows exactly where the bomb is at all times. Those are all the patches that have happened on the community test environment, and hopefully that lets you have some idea of what changes are being made and what is being worked on. Now, the changes to the non-disclosure agreement don't specifically mention making YouTube videos or putting gameplay videos up online. Now, I noticed some people have done it already, but I'm going to leave it over the weekend to see what the reaction is to that. So next week I might do some CTE gameplay videos so you can have a look at how the game's performing. They're going to have to wait until next week anyway, because I'm going away tomorrow and I won't be back until Wednesday. Now the non-disclosure agreement has been relaxed on CTE, then the updates on CTE will become part of Battlefield 4 news, because I think what's going to happen in future is we're going to have fewer updates for the Battlefield 4 Live and more smaller updates on CTE, and those small CTE updates will be tested, bundled together and then put out on the live version of Battlefield. So covering the news from CTE will give you an idea of what you can expect in Battlefield in the future. That's it for this episode of Battlefield 4 News. Like I say, I'm away till Wednesday, so if anything happens it won't get reported until then. But thanks for watching.